The hall glowed in gold. Crystal chandeliers, like inverted fountains of light, poured a warm shimmer over the marble floor, patterned as if woven by hand. At the far end, a jazz quartet played a slow, velvety tune, while waiters in white gloves drifted between tables like shadows moving to music. Tonight marked the 50th anniversary of Calderon Industries, an empire that had begun as a small riverside workshop and had grown into a global titan of technology and luxury. At the head table sat Eleanor Calderon, the family's matriarch, a woman whose posture resembled a statue and whose gaze could still a conversation mid-sentence. Around her neck glistened a necklace of rare blue diamonds, catching the light with each subtle movement. To her right sat Victor Calderon, the eldest son, impeccably dressed yet carrying an air of restrained tension. Beside him was his younger brother Liam, whose easy smile concealed the calculating sharpness in his eyes. On Eleanor's left sat Sophie, her 24-year-old granddaughter, who looked around the room as if she were searching for something or someone. The air was heavy with the scent of white roses and vintage champagne, and beneath the surface of polite laughter, something unspoken simmered. Victor swirled the champagne in his glass, barely hearing the music. The polished clink of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, it all felt distant, like a soundtrack to a life he no longer recognized. He remembered being a boy, standing in the original Calderon workshop, watching his father work with steady, calloused hands. Back then, the company had been small, honest, or so he'd believed. But over the years, fragments of doubt had crept in, whispers from disgruntled former employees, inexplicable gaps in financial records, deals signed in the dead of night. Across the hall, Sophie stood at the edge of the crowd, her champagne untouched. She wasn't interested in the food or the music. Something else tugged at her attention, a man in a dark suit, standing alone near the tall windows. He wasn't speaking to anyone. He wasn't on the guest list Sophie had reviewed earlier that day. Liam noticed her gaze and followed it. "See something interesting?" he asked lightly, though his tone carried an edge. Sophie glanced at him. "Do you know who that is?" Liam's smile deepened, not kindly. "I know exactly who everyone here is, cousin." He took a slow sip from his glass. "And if I didn't? I'd find out before asking questions." Meanwhile, in a secluded corner of the room, two business partners of Eleanor's spoke in hushed tones. "We can't let this resurface," one murmured. "It already has," the other replied. "And if he's here tonight, it's too late." Victor caught sight of them as he passed by. He couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the look, the kind of fear you only see when the truth is closer than comfort allows. Somewhere deep in his chest, an old suspicion stirred. Tonight was going to change everything. The gift table was a sculpture of excess, towers of silk-wrapped boxes, ribbon bows so large they looked like they belonged on parade floats. Beneath the sparkle of wrapping paper, there were envelopes too, handwritten cards, invitations to private clubs, even share certificates from loyal partners. Eleanor moved through the pile with the serene detachment of a queen inspecting tribute. Cameras flashed as she unwrapped a gold-foiled case of rare cognac and a diamond-encrusted fountain pen. She smiled on cue, thanked each donor with poised elegance. Then she saw it. A small, nondescript package, wrapped in plain brown paper. No ribbon. No card. The handwriting on the label was uneven, as if done in haste. "Who brought this?" Eleanor asked, her voice calm but sharper than the edge of a champagne flute. The nearest waiter shook his head. "It wasn't here when the event began. I found it among the others just moments ago." Eleanor unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a slim leather folder. No note, no signature, just a stack of aged documents, their edges yellowed, their ink faded but legible. She turned the first page and froze. They were patent papers. But not in the Calderon name. They bore another Adrian Hale. The invention described was unmistakable, the core technology on which Calderon Industries had been built. Eleanor's smile remained fixed, but her hand tightened on the folder until the leather creaked. Across the hall, Sophie noticed the change in her grandmother's expression. She took a step forward, then paused as she spotted the man in the dark suit again. He was watching Eleanor. Not casually. Not curiously. Intently. And this time, Sophie was sure, he was waiting for something. The clinking of crystal cut through the music like a summons. All eyes turned toward the head table as Victor rose to his feet, champagne flute in hand. He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes, and waited for the chatter to die. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth but carrying a weight that made the room instinctively lean closer, "tonight we honor 50 years of Calderon Industries. 50 years of innovation, vision, and, as we've always said, integrity." He let the last word hang, just long enough for Eleanor to sense where this was going. Victor's gaze swept the crowd. "Our story has been told countless times, a humble workshop turned empire, a testament to hard work and genius. But stories can be edited. And sometimes, the most important pages are missing." Sophie's grip tightened around her glass. She could feel the tension at the head table crystallizing into something dangerous. Liam's jaw flexed once, a tiny tell. Victor set his glass down and reached inside his jacket. When he withdrew his hand, it held a folder worn leather, just like the one Eleanor had just unwrapped. "This," he said, "is one of those missing pages." He opened the folder, revealing a sheaf of documents. "These patents are dated before Calderon Industries even existed. They were filed under a man named Adrian Hale, a name most of you have never heard. That's because his work was taken, without credit, without compensation, and used as the foundation of our company." The silence in the hall was absolute, save for the distant hum of the air conditioning. Cameras stopped clicking. Someone coughed, abruptly, like a gunshot in the quiet. Victor didn't flinch. "If we are to celebrate 50 years of excellence tonight, then we must also face 50 years of deception." At the far end of the hall, the man in the dark suit stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Eleanor's diamond necklace caught the light as she slowly rose from her chair. The empire had just been challenged, not from the outside, but from within its own bloodline. The applause never came. Instead, the hall erupted into a murmur, 100 hushed conversations overlapping, like the rustle of dry leaves before a storm. Eleanor didn't argue, didn't defend. She simply turned to the event coordinator at her side and whispered something. Within seconds, 2 of her most trusted aides slipped out of the room. "Liam," she said without looking at him, "go and speak to our guest. Find out what he wants and make sure he leaves quietly." Liam's smile returned, thin and precise. "Of course, Mother." He rose, buttoning his jacket, and made his way toward the man in the dark suit. Sophie, meanwhile, slipped away from the table entirely. She wasn't going to watch the family handle this in their usual way, with money, threats, or both. Instead, she headed toward Eleanor's private study at the far end of the estate. If Victor's accusations were true, there had to be proof hidden somewhere. The study was locked, but Sophie knew the house's quirks. A narrow servants' corridor behind the kitchen led to a secondary entrance. The door there wasn't locked, just guarded by a layer of dust, as if no one had touched it in years. Inside, the room smelled faintly of leather and perfume. Against one wall stood a tall mahogany cabinet with a built-in safe. Sophie knelt, running her fingers along the combination dial. She didn't know the numbers, but she remembered Eleanor's habit of using birthdays for everything. It took her 3 tries. The safe door opened with a soft metallic sigh. Inside were not stacks of money or jewels, but files. Dozens of them. The top one bore a name she didn't recognize, Adrian Hale, and a date. She reached for it, but paused as a shadow fell across the desk. She turned. Victor was standing in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here," he said. But his voice wasn't angry, it was urgent. Back in the ballroom, Liam stood face to face with the man in the dark suit. "I assume you're Mr. Hale," Liam said. The man's lips curved just enough to be called a smile. "I assume you're the one who knows exactly how to make this worth my while." The moon hung low over the estate, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens. Inside, the banquet hall was a hive of whispers, glasses clinking, and the occasional forced laugh. But beyond the light and music, tension coiled like a snake ready to strike. Victor led Sophie out to the balcony, where the cool night air cut through the heavy scent of roses and champagne. The city lights twinkled below, oblivious to the chaos above. "They're lying," Victor said, voice low, almost a growl. Everything you've been told about the company, it's a lie. I found the proof. But it's bigger than you think. Bigger than me. Sophie's eyes darted to the hall. Through the open doors, she could see Liam moving between groups of guests, speaking quietly, gesturing. Every motion seemed calculated. I know, she said. That's why I came here. I found something else, something the rest of them don't even suspect. Victor leaned closer. What? Not patents, she whispered. Contracts. Agreements. Signed, sealed, hidden away in a safe. The real story isn't theft, it's betrayal. Someone in this family has been manipulating everything, including Adrian Hale himself. Victor's jaw tightened. Then we need to act. Tonight. Meanwhile, Liam confronted the man in the dark suit, who stood perfectly still under the chandelier's glow. I know why you're here, Liam said smoothly. But do you think I'd let you ruin us? The man's lips curved. I didn't come to ruin anyone. I came to correct the record. But someone else has other ideas. At that exact moment, a waiter tripped in the ballroom, sending a tray of crystal tumblers crashing to the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot, drawing everyone's attention. Sophie froze. Through the doorway, she saw it. The dark-suited man's hand had gone into his coat pocket, not for a weapon, but for a flash drive. Liam's eyes narrowed, calculating. And then, before anyone could react, the lights went out. Screams erupted. Furniture toppled. Guests stumbled over one another in the pitch-black chaos. When the lights flickered back on, the hall had changed. The man in the dark suit was on the floor, unconscious. The flash drive was gone. And standing in the center of the chaos, Victor looked more determined than ever, but the first finger of suspicion was already pointing at him. The aftermath of the blackout left the hall in disarray. Broken glasses glittered on the floor like dark stars, and the hum of whispered panic filled every corner. Guests clutched their coats, eyes wide, scanning for threats that no one could clearly identify. Eleanor remained seated at the head table, her expression calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the arms of her chair. She had survived countless crises in her life, yet this one felt different. This one felt personal. Sophie slipped back into the room, clutching the folder she had taken from the safe. "Grandmother," she said, voice shaking. "You need to see this." Eleanor took the folder, her eyes scanning the documents. Each page revealed contracts, agreements, and correspondences that no one had ever seen, proof that not only had Adrian Hale been cheated, but someone within the Calderon family had orchestrated it, manipulating both Victor and Liam to maintain control. Eleanor's sharp gaze fell on Victor. "You knew?" she asked quietly. Victor looked down, guilt flickering across his face. "I didn't know the full extent. But I suspected. I wanted to do the right thing tonight." Before Eleanor could respond, Liam stepped forward, smirking. "Do you really think this was your plan to expose me?" he said, voice dripping with amusement. "The truth is, I've been playing all sides. Victor thinks he's the hero, you think you're untouchable, and Sophie, you think you're clever." Sophie's heart stopped. "You?" Liam laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the shattered ballroom. "Yes. While you all were busy looking for evidence, I was making sure the real power never left my hands. The patents, the contracts, the money, all of it could be mine, and tonight, everyone finally sees who really pulls the strings." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She had underestimated her own son. But in that moment, another truth hit her: the man in the dark suit was gone, the flash drive vanished, and with it, the leverage that could destroy Liam completely. Victor stepped forward. "Then we end this now," he said, voice steady. "No more games." Liam smirked. "You can try. But the house always wins." From the shadows near the ballroom doors, Sophie realized the final twist. The real mastermind was not the one standing in front of them. It was the person who had orchestrated the blackout, taken the evidence, and walked out unnoticed, someone Eleanor trusted completely. She turned just in time to see a familiar silhouette slip into the night, carrying secrets that could finally destroy Calderon Industries forever. The estate was quiet now, the echoes of the shattered banquet lingering like smoke. Broken glasses, toppled chairs, and strewn papers painted the scene of chaos. But the real storm was still brewing, hidden, subtle, and lethal. Sophie stood in the study, clutching the folder she had risked everything to retrieve. Victor was at her side, his face grim, trying to make sense of the unraveling family. Who could have orchestrated all of this? Sophie whispered. Eleanor entered quietly, her calm demeanor back in full force. Her gaze swept over the room, lingering on Victor, Liam, and Sophie. Then she stopped, her eyes settling on the last person she had expected, the event coordinator, standing in the shadows near the doorway, face eerily serene. "You," Eleanor said slowly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The coordinator smiled, almost imperceptibly. "I suppose you've pieced it together," they said, voice soft but firm. "All of it. The blackout, the missing flash drive, the manipulation. And you, dear family, were so blind, so predictable." Victor stepped forward, anger flaring. "Why? Why betray your own family?" The coordinator's smile widened. "Because loyalty is a currency, and some debts cannot be repaid. While you were busy pointing fingers at each other, I ensured the truth remained hidden until the time was right. The patents, the contracts, everything. It was never meant to destroy Calderon Industries. It was meant to free it. Free it from your greed, your ambition, your lies." Liam, realizing too late, stumbled back. You can't just." Eleanor's voice was calm but deadly. "Apparently, they can. And they did." The coordinator turned to Sophie and Victor. "The Empire will survive, but it will change. The true story of Adrian Hale, the exploitation, the hidden manipulations, it will finally be acknowledged. Calderon Industries will rise again, not on deceit, but on truth. And some of you," they said, glancing at Liam, "will have to face the consequences of your choices." Liam's smirk vanished. His control, his careful schemes, had unraveled before his eyes. Sophie exhaled slowly, realizing the layers of deception that had nearly destroyed everything and the courage it had taken to uncover them. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, the Calderon family gathered in silence. Their empire remained, but nothing would ever be the same. Some wounds could heal, others would leave permanent scars. And somewhere in the city, the coordinator disappeared into the morning mist, leaving behind a banquet of secrets, finally, fully revealed.